Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as always by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Scott Bogman. Guys, we are continuing our rankings and tiers series here. We are talking mostly quarterbacks today. We're going to hit on tight ends at the end of the show because we want to give them some love, but we figured it wasn't worth an entire episode. So we're going to combine them, focus primarily on quarterback because Superflex is such, the prominent format in Dynasty League. So we really want to give quarterback their attention. We will hit on tight ends at the end of the show. Just a quick reminder for everyone, all of our early 2024 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. You can also navigate from there to our staff Dynasty rankings on the site as well. Guys, let's dive right in with the quarterbacks, and we'll hit at the end of the position a little bit on overall strategy in terms of 1 QB versus Superflex. For now, this is just our rankings here that we'll start off with. And tier number 1 is Josh Allen at 1, Patrick Mahomes at 2, CJ Stroud at 3, and Jalen Hurts at 4. It's just 4 names long. Again, Allen, Mahomes, Stroud, and Hurts. Fitz, what stands out to you there?
I don't think Hurts belongs in this tier, personally, after the big drop-off we saw last year in terms of his passing without Shane Steichen. I don't know if the tush-push touchdowns are sustainable now that Jason Kelce is retired. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, it's an interesting debate. I'm going to go with the guy who gained a bunch of really good pass catchers rather than the guy who lost a lot of pass-catching firepower. But I like Mahomes over Allen.
Yeah, Hurts, you have down at 8 here, which is, based on the way we have the tiers, would be tier 3 because the next tier is only 3 names long. So that's a pretty wide gap from where he's currently ranked at 4. Bogman, you do have Hurts right at QB4.
I do. My thing with this tier, Worm, is where the hell's Lamar? Why is Lamar not in here? Look, I'm a Ravens hater. Everybody knows that, but I'm a Lamar fan for sure. I've always been big on Lamar. He's my number 2 QB, so I was surprised to not see him in here because he still has crazy rushing upside. So it's just a little surprising.
Just be like a health thing. People just think of Lamar as a health risk. I mean, I can't think of what else would keep him out of there.
That's it. That's exactly it. It's the overcorrection. So.
And I think the passing game is going to continue to develop, like year 2 with Todd Monken. Like, I know maybe they don't have the best pass catchers in the world. It's still better than it was like year 2 and 3 for him. And he dropped a lot of weight. Like, I could see I don't think he's going to break his own record for rushing yards by a quarterback in a season, but I could see him having dropped this weight back to like that 1,000-yard rusher type of year from him. So, and it's not like he's old. I mean, he was born in 97, so he's younger than Allen and Mahomes and Hurts. Or no, not younger than Hurts. He's younger than Allen and Mahomes and close to Hurts' age. So, yeah, I'm totally with you, Bogman.
Yeah. No surprise that Wormeli is with me, but that
I think it's a clear one. I don't think that's being a homer, right? I mean, Fitz, you also have him in the top 4.
No,
yeah, I mean,
but no one is shocked.
I would much rather have him than Hurts. Like, I'm concerned about Hurts. From week 11 through the end of the regular season, he averaged 6.5 yards per pass attempt. That's a really bad number. He was 7.2 on the year after being at 8 the year before. And now they've got Saquon Barkley. Is the rushing value still going to be there? As it is, he went from like over 50 rushing yards a game in 2022 to like 35 or 36 rushing yards a game last year. So the yardage dropped. He's had double-digit rushing touchdowns every year, and will we still see that now that they've got Saquon Barkley? Maybe they don't do the tush-push every time now and just hand the ball off to Saquon.
Yeah, I'm totally with Bogman on Lamar, and I'm totally with Fitz on Hurts. I think you both are spot on there. You guys do
the Hurts thing real quick. I think I'm just not the gray cloud. I don't know that I'm high or low on Hurts. I'll say that I have been impressed with what he's done in the NFL because I thought coming out of Oklahoma, really Alabama, I was like, I don't know about the accuracy. He played well at Oklahoma. I gave him a little more of a benefit of the doubt. And then he came into Philly as a 2nd-round pick and took this job. So I'm not as down on Hurts as Fitz is, but I understand. I feel like we're getting a lot of the second half was bad for everyone. I'm pumping the brakes a little bit. I still think he's going to be pretty solid, but I would, he's in this tier, but he's definitely not at the top. So I'll say that.
You guys disagree on who the number one quarterback in Dynasty should be. Bogman, you're in line with consensus. You have Josh Allen. And then Fitz, of course, you have Patrick Mahomes. Bogman, starting with you, what's the case for Allen ahead of Mahomes?
Yeah, I think it's just the crazy rushing upside. It is the 15 touchdowns, and it's the fact that maybe they need him to run more. I know we say that, we took a lot of pass catchers away from him, and we did. You and I both are believers in Keon Coleman, though, Fitzy. We both like Khalil Shakir. We both think Kincaid is going to take a step up. So they're not guarantees, of course, and that's why I have a bigger tier here for me. I have 5 QBs in here. So I don't know. I think for me, for Josh Allen, the arm strength is always going to play. The running upside is always going to play. So he has a safe floor, even if he's not scoring 15 touchdowns again.
Fitz, what's the case for Mahomes?
It is that he is the best pure passer of all time, probably in the NFL, and just added to really promising wide receivers in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. He's got speed to play with now. He's still going to get, hopefully another year or two out of Travis Kelce. So I don't know. I mean, I think his game is going to age really well, and I don't know how well Josh Allen's rushing is going to age as he creeps up on age 30. And
he throws picks too, Fitz. Josh Allen does. He will throw a 500 ball up, which is about the only frustrating thing in his game to me. So
yeah, but this is certainly not meant to bash Josh Allen. He's a fantastic dynasty asset. I just like Mahomes a little more for the format.
And if I was starting an NFL franchise, Mahomes is easily my number one.
Yeah, I mean, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
The last guy in this tier, CJ Stroud. Clearly, you guys have already answered this question with your rankings, which is the answer to the question I'm about to ask is yes. But does a guy who runs as little as Stroud does belong in the tier 1 of a fantasy quarterback ranking? I mean, obviously, he's the youngest guy in this tier by a couple of years. Just one of the most impressive rookie seasons of all time. He's got great pass catchers around him. I'm not making the case against Stroud in general, but we know what rushing does to quarterback value in fantasy. Stroud doesn't do that to the degree that the other guys in the top 5 do it. So does that kind of knock him in your eyes? Fitz, what do you think?
It's a fair question, Worm, and we might have Anthony Richardson ahead of CJ Stroud in our dynasty rankings months from now after we see how valuable Richardson's running truly is in fantasy. But for now, I think based on the success that Stroud had as a rookie, the fact that they've added Stephon Diggs and he's now got maybe, the best, deepest wide receiver core in the game around him. It just he feels really safe for Dynasty right now. Even without that rushing upside, Stroud just seems like he's going to be a top half QB1 for, many years to come.
Bogman, you're slightly lower on Stroud, but still in the top 5 for you.
And in the same tier. Like I said, I have, I think I said 5. I actually have 6 QBs. I put Joe Burrow in there too, even with his injury history. But I think the thing, I understand he doesn't run, but we saw him without Tank Dell for a big chunk of the season put up these historic numbers. What is he going to do with the game slowing down a little bit in his second year? You add Diggs and you get a healthy Tank Dell back, and Joe Mixon out of the backfield is a better weapon than Devin Singletary was. So this offense, when the whole offense elevates, the quarterback gets the biggest boost. And I think that's what the Texans have done this offseason. So I'm really excited about him.
You mentioned Joe Burrow. Let's move to the consensus tier 2, which is just 3 names. It's Lamar Jackson, who we already mentioned. Joe Burrow is at QB6, and then Anthony Richardson at QB7. I don't think Joe Burrow should be in tier 1. I think tier 2 is perfectly fine. I'm not saying he should be much lower, but I think the lack of running and the injury history combined, plus I know he signed, the short-term extension, but Higgins might not be there long-term. Obviously, Chase is great, but I just think that there are other quarterbacks I'd rather have that I think are a tier ahead. Again, not a knock on Burrow. I think he's tier 2, and that's fine. But Bogman, what's the case for Burrow being actually in that same tier as the other 5 guys?
I think the thing is we kind of knew what the issue was coming into Cincinnati, right? And it was this offensive line is terrible, and it's been bad since he's been there. It's not the reason why he keeps getting hurt. Of course, It's not one reason. It's many different multiple factors. I mean, when he got hurt this year, it was or a couple years ago, it was in the camp and all of that stuff. But I just think that they built the line better. Yes, Higgins may go, but they've done enough to put Burton in here. I like Josevich. I like Charlie Jones. This is a vertical pass first offense. They've given up on Mixon. They're going with a young running back or an inexperienced running back group, I guess I should say, in Chase Brown and Zach Moss, which I think is going to lean towards them passing a bunch. So I just think as a pass heavy offense, the weapons around him are still good. Yes, he's been hurt, but we know the upper level talent that Joe Burrow is. And the 2 times he stayed healthy for a full season, AFC Championship, Super Bowl, big numbers too. So for me, if he gets hurt again this year, no doubt he can't be in the top tier. He just can't be. Availability is the best ability, the old scouting trope, all that stuff. But I think the offense is designed to pass. The weapons are still good. Even without Higgins, I think the weapons would still be good. And they're going even further away from a heavy run game. So for me, it's just all built for Burrow to be good. He just has to stay on the field.
Fitz, you have historically been a pretty big Joe Burrow supporter. You have him ranked QB7 currently in Dynasty. How much of that is the injury versus the lack of running versus anything else you want to throw out?
The injury thing weighs into it, Worm, and I'm glad you mentioned that because not a lot of people seem concerned about Joe Burrow's injury history. And I get it. Joe Burrow is really good. He is one of the players who has a case for being the second best pure passer in the NFL behind Patrick
I think
Mahomes.
so too. Yeah.
Burrow's in that conversation for sure, if not, clearly the number 2. But man, a multi-ligament tear in his knee a few years ago. The calf injury last year, which he tried to play through and was completely ineffective while trying to play through. And then the mysterious wrist injury. Like, that's a lot of stuff for a guy to have gone through at a pretty early stage in his career. So I'm a little bit concerned about it. But if he can stay healthy, knock wood, he should be, a top 5, 6, 7 quarterback.
Well, first of all, this is a conversation for a different show, but I think I would have Stroud as the number 2 pure passer in the NFL already. Like, that's how much I do love him, like, just from his arm. I mean, to me, like, the injury is obviously a major thing. And I mean, he was talking this offseason about how, like, he wasn't able to find other quarterbacks and people who throw things for a living who have recovered from this wrist injury before. Like, I think it's a bigger concern than people are discussing so far in the offseason, let alone the other injuries that you laid out, Fitz. But even if he was healthy, I still, like, in Dynasty, I would rather have, if you guaranteed me health for both, I'd certainly rather have Anthony Richardson. I just think the rushing ceiling is the difference is too great for what some of these other guys in this range can do with their legs, that even if I think Joe Burrow, from an NFL standpoint, if you guaranteed me health, sure, like, clear one of the top 3 or 4 guys, no doubt about it. But from fantasy, again, the injuries combined with the lack of rushing, to me, he would be at the bottom of tier 2. Again, still in tier 2. We already mentioned, like I said, Lamar and Anthony Richardson. The cases for both of them are very obvious. We've already hit on them. Just the rushing upside is immense. Probably the 2 best rushing upsides in the entire NFL in terms of the quarterback position. Bogman, you're slightly lower on Anthony Richardson. You got him down at QB8. Is that more like we haven't seen it happen before and you're a little worried about, like, the experience level with him? Or is that, again, kind of an injury thing where he only played 4 games in his first season?
It's the 4 games. It's combined. You say, look, we've only seen 4 games. They were pretty good. Yeah, and they were. But we've only seen the 4 games. So I want to see him last. Like, at least for Joe Burrow, we know for sure if he's healthy, he's good. So Richardson, the jury is still out. I mean, everyone was saying how unbelievably raw he was. A lot of people were putting Bryce Young ahead of him, CJ Stroud ahead of him. CJ Stroud was amazing, but I think you're right, where I'm like, if you guarantee me for health, it's Lamar is ahead of him if you're guaranteeing me health, and probably nobody else. Maybe Jayden Daniels if he's starting and healthy the whole year. Like, that rushing upside is insane. So yeah, he would go, if you guarantee health, he'd go way high.
If you guarantee health, Richardson's tier 1.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a
maybe
right
QB
fit.
2. Right.
Like, I just don't
Yeah,
see a
he
case against him
averaged
being tier 1 outside of health.
on a per snap basis last year. Small sample size, granted, but Richardson averaged significantly more points per snap than Josh Allen, who led all quarterbacks in fantasy score.
Yeah, and I love Steichen. We talked about it on the Hurts side of things. Like, he's paired with an offensive mind I'm really excited about. They've added pass catchers to that offense. I mean, we're not the first podcast to talk about the upside of Anthony Richardson. It's been a talking point this offseason, but like, just keep talking about it. It is very legitimate. Like, the upside is absolutely outrageous, through the roof. Fitz, just very quickly, because I think only Bogman hit on Lamar. What do you expect out of Lamar this season?
More good things. Maybe, I don't know. I suppose Derrick Henry could help make him even more efficient, but like a second season with Todd Monken, I think it could get even better for Lamar.
I don't know that the rushing touchdowns will ever quite be there compared to like a Josh Allen, but I think the yardage will be there, and he'll get enough touchdowns to be an elite rushing fantasy quarterback, of course. Quick note about Reality Sports Online. By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FANTASYPROS to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FANTASYPROS to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, guys, let's go to tier 3 here at the quarterback position. This is, to me, by far the most interesting tier to discuss. It's larger than the first two tiers. It runs from quarterback 8 through quarterback 16. The names are Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Jayden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, and Tua Tagovailoa. To me, this grouping, particularly those first like 6 or 7 names, will be the quarterbacks that determine league winners, because everybody knows, when you're getting your first quarterback off the board in a super flex, you know what you're getting from Josh Allen, you know what you're getting from Patrick Mahomes, you know what you're getting from Lamar Jackson. These are the guys who could play at a tier 1 level in any given season, or maybe even elevate there for, the foreseeable future, while also still having some of that downside where you're not 100% sure where you're going to get. So I'm really excited to parse through these names. Fitz, of this grouping, is there one that stands out to you as being the most incorrectly ranked? He's too high or too low?
I'm not sure. Like, I don't have any major beefs with the way they're ranked in ECR. I think I'm fairly close to being in line with all these. No one stands out as egregiously misranked to me.
I know at least one person is a little bit misranked according to Bogman, and that's Jordan Love.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a couple weeks, and I actually had to have Fitz come to my defense on Twitter about this take. It was my most unpopular take, but really, what it is I have Jordan Love in the next tier down. That's all. I think the Packers are limiting his rushing upside. I think it's in there, but they're not letting him do it. I think they're going to rededicate to the run game, drafting Marshawn Lloyd and signing Josh Jacobs to a decent sized contract. So I don't, and repeatability is a question too, right? Like, he was great, but I think in terms of upside, there are still some of these rookies, most of these rookies, I think, have just more upside than Love. That's all. I still think Love is a very good quarterback, and he was so good last season when a lot of people were doubting him. I think he was doubted last year. I think maybe he's a little overhyped this year. That's all. So I'm kind of splitting the difference.
If Love plays this whole season at, let's say, like 85% of what he was in the second half last year, so a slight step down, but we see it for a full year on top of the half year of greatness, where do you think you would have him ranked going into next season?
I would have him a tier higher than I currently have him, and he would definitely be a QB1, no doubt, to me. So, probably like a top 10 QB, no doubt to me, if we see it at 85% again.
I did come to Bogman's defense on Twitter about this, but I will demand an apology to her for Bogman when he is forced to move Jordan Love ahead of Justin Herbert, who really they're kind of similar in a lot of ways, like ton of arm talent, some mobility that they bring to the table, like not a Josh Allen type rushing potential, but they add a little something with their running ability. The difference is Jordan Love has a much better supporting cast, better pass catchers, a more prolific offense.
100% correct, Fitz. But I think the one thing that a lot of people are forgetting is how bad this Chargers defense was last year. And I don't think even with Harbaugh coming in, it gets fixed quickly. So, they're going to want to run the ball, yes, but they don't have a Derrick Henry. They have Gus Edwards and Kamani Vidal and those guys, and a leaky defense. And, a guy that in Justin Herbert, where who do I want to put the ball in the hands of at the end of the game? I'm not giving it to Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Let my franchise QB throw that thing. Let him sling it. So I think Harbaugh's going to have to realize that. And just in terms of sheer talent, Herbert is way better than Love. I don't think even the Homer Fitz would disagree with me there. The arm is enormous and the rushing side is huge, but he always gets hurt when he runs. So I think the running upside is limited. If they could do it right, I think it'd be better. But that dude needs to learn how to slide. He's always taking rib shots and everything. So
I don't think there's a big talent difference at all between Love and Herbert. I think they're the same guy, basically. I mean, you don't think Jordan Love made some holy bleep throws last year?
He made some great throws, but I don't know that there's many guys in the NFL with an arm like Justin Herbert's. So I don't think it's close.
Right. Herbert's like, look at Herbert's yards per attempt for his career. Like, not that impressive, really. I mean, I think his rookie season raised expectations that he is still trying to meet.
You might be right.
We've talked a bit about like real life rankings a couple of times, and that's kind of easy to do with quarterbacks because it's just such a common talking point with everybody the entire offseason. I feel like Herbert, like if you were drafting as an NFL team, would be like the 4th or 5th quarterback off the board, and Love would be like the 7th or 8th, which is not that wide of a gap. Maybe those are off that I haven't like sat down and kind of written it all out. That's just kind of my gut, what I would imagine. But like Love was really good last year, like in a way that we haven't seen it sustained, but looks sustainable to me at least. Whereas Herbert has kind of, struggled in some of those areas that Fitz alluded to. I'll be really curious to see where we're ranking Herbert after year 1 of the Harbaugh regime. One guy that you guys are in agreement is at the top of this group of names is Caleb Williams. He will be in startup drafts, superflex drafts. He will be a first-round pick despite having never played a snap. This is one of the great quarterback prospects to enter the league in some time. Fitz, you have him QB6, Bogman QB7. That's both one step higher than his ECR of QB8. Fitz, and I'll ask you the same thing, Bogman. Do you have him in tier 2 with that QB6 ranking, or do you think tier 3 is still okay as long as he's at the top?
I would have him in tier 2. I mean, I think his improvisational skills are pretty special. Like we're going to be excited by some of the plays this guy makes, like right away, hitting the ground running. And the fact that the Bears have surrounded him with all this pass catching talent is, that's really encouraging. But even if he didn't have that, I'd still be really excited about him. I think he's going to put up like good passing numbers right away with some value out of his legs too.
I think, and Bogman, I'll get to you in a second, but like when looking at all these names, like I do agree that Caleb should be in tier 2. And when looking at all these names, there's nobody in this tier that I'm really even remotely considering taking over Caleb in a dynasty. And even some of that is just like market value. Like if you put all these guys in the trade block in dynasty leagues, Caleb's getting the biggest return.
100%. Absolutely. And I'm with you. And Caleb Williams, once again, I have bigger tiers probably at most positions, but at QB, he is my number 1 QB in my second tier. So at 7. So yeah, I'm right there with, and Fitz said everything correctly. I mean, it's not just the unbelievable talent that he comes into the NFL with. It's the supporting cast that Chicago is putting around him. The fact that their defense isn't 100% fixed yet either. And the run game, I mean, we saw DeAndre Swift have a good year last year, but I think most of that was the Eagles O-line. So they're going to have to everything, just like I said with Joe Burrow, and they're going to be focused on passing the ball down the field. The Bears offense is going to be the same way.
I think there's a really interesting case to be made for any of these next three guys as the player most likely to go up a tier by the end of this season. Kyler Murray, Jayden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence. I'm really fascinated really by all three of these guys to see what we get this season. You guys both have, well, it looks like Bogman, you have Kyler the lowest of those three. Fitz, you have Trevor Lawrence the lowest of those three, but Fitz, you have them 10, 11, and 12. So they're back to back to back. Of those three, and Fitz, I'll start with you. Is there one that stands out that you think has the best chance of kind of taking a big step forward this season?
Maybe Trevor Lawrence. He just needs protection. Like if that offensive line actually holds up for him, I think he could take a big step up in class.
Bogman, what do you think about those three?
I think it could be Trevor Lawrence too. Like the thing with Trevor also, is that of course he was stunted by Urban Meyer, right? And Doug Peterson was the QB whisperer, before Dave Canales was, right? And everyone kind of thought, oh, we're going to take this huge step. It hasn't worked out yet. Let him run a little more too. I mean, I know he just signed a massive extension, but this dude had more rushing yards than Fields his last year in college. And we just have not seen them really let him cut it loose. He's running fine, better than guys like Dak, but not enough, not to the talent level of a runner that he is. So I would like to see the Jags. This dude has not hit his potential yet. Let him use every tool in the box. So I'd love to see them let him run it a little bit more, run some more RPOs or something. And they've said they want to get fewer carries for ETN too. Maybe you don't want to give him to your, six-figure QB here, but let's do it. Let's get him the ball and let him run it. So
we probably should say a quick word about Jayden Daniels though, and like we could conceivably have him on tier 1 at this time of year from now. I mean, we know what the rushing potential is. He's going to be playing for Cliff Kingsbury, who milked a pretty good first year out of Kyler Murray. And oh, by the way, Kingsbury really loves to push the tempo. They're going to play at a fast rate and run a lot of plays, which is really going to help. So there's QB1 potential. I actually did a redraft, a 14-team redraft draft right before this show. I took Jayden Daniels as my QB1, and I was pretty excited about it. Like I think he could make a big splash right away.
He's the highest I have ranked out of those guys. So I kind of, it would be no shock. It's all staying healthy for me. It's the comparison that we give to RG3 is for a reason. The very similar body type. And I am afraid of them running him a little bit too much because you talk about a guy that doesn't know how to slide. That is something he really needs. He needs to get with Kyler Murray to learn it. Get him a baseball slide or something, for God's sake. He needs to learn how to slide.
You probably can't trade for Jayden Daniels because whoever rosters him just drafted him in their rookie drafts. I think the other two guys, though, Kyler and Trevor Lawrence, are great buying opportunities. I'm not even going to say buy low, but I think I would pay a fair market price for both of them and thinking that they can take steps up this year. So I like both of them. I do think in this tier, the last three names are the correct names to be the last three, and that's Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, and Tua. That's probably the order I would have it. I don't think I would prefer any of those three over any of the guys in tier 3 we've already named. Is that fair, Bogman, or would you make the case for any of them?
No, that's absolutely fair. And, I'm a big Dak stan. I've loved him since Mississippi State, but I'm below ECR on him, and Fitz and I are below ECR on all three of those dudes. And it's, there's a reason for it. So not a lot of upside there.
Yeah, Fitz, same thought.
Well, not exactly. I mean, so Dak's older and Tua has the concussion concerns, but as far as upside, I actually think Dak and Tua have a lot of upside for this year. The Cowboys threw a lot last year, and now they've got nothing at running back. Like they're going to throw a lot again this year. So there is upside there for Dak, I think, and he was really efficient last year as a passer. Like he's a really good passer. But it's the age that sort of limits where we're ranking him for Dynasty. And Tua, I mean, he's got a great set of wide receivers, and the Dolphins just lost a ton of defensive talent in the offseason. Not to mention their defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio. Like, their defense is going to be a train wreck, and I think Miami's going to be involved in a lot of shootouts this year. So if they can keep Tua upright, which is kind of a big if, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he threatened like 5,000 passing yards this year. Like, every Miami game is going to be like a 35-32 shootout.
You could put Tua in that pure passer group as well. Like, he definitely doesn't have the arm of those other guys, but he is
All placement's amazing.
unbelievably accurate, but it's all about staying healthy. I mean, this dude is one bad concussion away from never playing again. And that's, I think everyone thinks Brock Purdy is way more talented than we gave him credit for coming in, but he is obviously elevated by the people around him. And for Dak, for this year, he absolutely has crazy upside. I'm drafting Dak in so many best balls right now. It's crazy. I love it because they don't have a run game. They're going to throw the ball so much, but it is, he's 31. The rest of these guys are young guys. So does he still belong in this group? Yeah, because of his talent, but the age keeps him low.
I've said it on this podcast and another podcast on our feed before, and I'm sure other people have maybe heard this nugget elsewhere, but Tua led the league in passing yards and was still QB 19 in fantasy points per game last year. So the possibility of him throwing for 5,000 yards sounds exciting, but to me, the ceiling is just capped given the injury history and his really inability to run at this point. And, Tyreek Hill, another year older. So I'm pretty low on Tua in terms of dynasty right now. Let's go to tier 4. This runs from QB 17 through QB 28. I'll give you the names quickly. Drake Maye, JJ McCarthy, Jared Goff, Bryce Young, Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, Will Levis, Baker Mayfield, Bo Nix, Matthew Stafford, Justin Fields, and Michael Penix Jr. Some interesting names in this grouping as well. Bogman, one guy that you are high on, JJ McCarthy, you've got a QB 10. What's the case there?
The case is that he's unbelievably talented, great arm talent. And Kevin O'Connell is a pass-first guy. How many games last year did you see the Vikings completely abandon the run? Obviously, it was tough when Alexander Mattison is dropping the ball every 8 steps or whatever last year. Like, that was a huge issue, of course. But there are so many times where he just gave up on the running game and they just passed. And I understand that that's why you go out and you get a big name like Aaron Jones, right? But Aaron Jones is past his prime. He's still a good running back for the NFL, but he's definitely not the Aaron Jones you're expecting from 4 or 5 seasons ago. So, they're going to pass the ball. This is a pass-heavy offense. You have great weapons in Jefferson, and everybody knows how I feel about Addison. I love Addison. Hawkinson's one of the best tight ends in the league as well. And they had the 4th most passing attempts with Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs after Kirk Cousins went down, right? So this is a pass heavy offense, and McCarthy has some rushing upside. So put all that together, the upside is there. I know he hasn't played a snap in the NFL. I get it. That makes people nervous. I'm just not nervous. I think he's going to be really good. And I know Fitz has a little bit of love for Sam Darnold. I just don't think it's going to be long. Maybe Sam Darnold holds on to the grip on this job for half the season or something. That could definitely happen. But I still think the long-term outlook of McCarthy is too good. That's why I have him as a QB1.
Fitz, you don't quite have him in the top 10, but you do have him as a high-end QB2 in Dynasty.
Oh, yeah, I like him. And Boggs, make no mistake, I don't think that Sam Darnold is going to have Vikings second-guessing who their QB of the future is. Sam Darnold is he is Maisie Bird, or he is Horton sitting on the egg, waiting for it to hatch for Maisie Bird. JJ McCarthy is Maisie Bird in this scenario. So yeah, and I echo a lot of the same things about McCarthy. And for me, it's like McCarthy neck and neck with Maye. And I know McCarthy's situation is unquestionably healthier, better, vastly better pass catchers, better play caller, all of that. But I do think people are kind of sleeping on Drake Maye's rushing potential a little bit. Like, when Drake Maye finally gets in there and plays a full season as a starter, probably won't be this year, but like in 2025, would not shock me if he was top 5 in rushing yardage among quarterbacks. He is that aggressive a runner.
I was taking in rookie drafts, I had Drake Maye just very slightly ahead of JJ McCarthy, even after knowing the landing spot. And the landing spot is really the only reason why I would have considered, McCarthy over Maye at all. I just really like the prospect in Maye. You guys have them closely ranked. Fitz, you're 1 spot lower on Maye right now, and Bogman 3 spots lower on McCarthy. That's still pretty close on both those guys. I think it'll be really interesting to see which of those two maybe separates themselves from each other.
By the way, you said lower, but you meant I guess
lower on Maye, higher on
yeah.
McCarthy. Yeah, good to clarify.
But I mean, Drake Maye, and this is the reason why I pushed down a guy like Jordan Love. Jordan Love had a great season. I'm not killing him for that. It's just I like these guys. I like McCarthy in this offense, and even Drake Maye, who didn't land in a good situation. You're right, Wormeli. The talent is unbelievably high for this guy, and Fitz is right too. He is going to take off and run more than expected. So he's going to give you some garbage yards at the end of games there as well with his rushing upside and maybe get in the end zone sometimes too. So it's not that I hate Jordan Love. It's just that I like these guys a lot, these guys coming in. So that is a big reason why I'm not as high on Jordan Love as ECR.
There's a lot of veterans in this, grouping in tier 4. I mentioned Deshaun Watson, who's a really interesting case, given what he was early in his career and has been lately. Kirk Cousins, obviously coming off the Achilles, has got some pieces around him in Atlanta. They also drafted Michael Penix, who's also in this tier. I think Stafford, and based on your guys' current rankings, you don't agree with me. I think Stafford is a little underranked here. I'd be pretty content to have him if I'm in a win now mode as my QB2. Being ranked ECR QB 26, I think is maybe a little low. Like, I don't think he should be lower than Kirk Cousins. They're both win now guys. I'd rather have Stafford than Cousins, like pretty easily, actually. What do you guys think about Stafford? I mean, again, I know I can see in your rankings that he's roughly in line with, your rankings and consensus, but I think there's a case to be made if you're a win now manager that Stafford is a really interesting piece to have. Fitz, what do you think?
Yeah, Stafford should only be on contending teams. If you're a rebuilding team, please trade Matthew Stafford in Superflex to someone who needs it for this year. For redraft, I have Stafford ahead of Kirk Cousins. No question in my mind that Stafford is and has been a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins throughout his career. But this could be like Stafford's last year, whereas I'm pretty sure Cousins is going to, try to play and cash in on that big contract.
I that's fair, and you do have him back to back. I just am. If I'm in win now mode, if I'm on a contending team, like Kirk Cousins, I'm not holding on to for his long-term value, I guess is my point. So like maybe you do get more long-term value than you get out of Stafford, but I would more highly value whatever I get this year between the two of them than I would, Cousins will give me something 3 years from now and Stafford's a 0, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and that's my whole thing with Stafford too. I mean, I have him 11 spots higher in redraft than this. I have him as a high-end QB2 in redraft, but for Dynasty, as Fitz said, you are only guaranteed this year, and you just never know. He's got his ring, he's got a ton of records. There's not a lot keeping him around. So, one bad injury, he's done. You could say the same thing about Kirk Cousins. He could be, but like Fitz said, he has more incentive after signing that enormous deal. So, I mean, look, Stafford could decide he wants to play another couple of years and do a Tom Brady and stick around for much longer, and we'll all look dumb at the end of this. But I think it's 1 season, maybe 2 seasons, and you never know. You never really know when we're going to start seeing things click down for a player either. So he's walking that tightrope right now.
Is there a case, Fitz, for Will Levis to be ranked higher than Bryce Young? How much weight is the draft capital going into the fact that Young is a few spots higher? Because Levis has better pieces around him. They both didn't really show all that much last year, so it's not like Bryce Young way outperformed him in year 1. I get the draft capital is not nothing, but I think there's a world where Levis is just better this year, and they're both young, and people are taking him ahead of Young a year from now in Dynasty.
It could be, and maybe Will Levis follows the Josh Allen path, where we all remember Josh Allen was actually a much maligned prospect, seen as kind of this erratic, strong-armed, but inconsistent passer, and a guy who was prone to making bad decisions. Will Levis has a lot of the same knocks, and they've surrounded him with incredible pass-catching talent, and I do think Brian Callahan's dad, Bill, is going to wave his magic wand and make that offensive line a lot better this year, because Bill Callahan's probably the best offensive line coach of all time. So yeah, like we could see Will Levis taking a big step up in class, but I'm also excited for Bryce Young, who had just a terrible situation last year, awful pass catchers, awful offensive line. What can he do this year now that they've upgraded his supporting cast a little and given him QB whisperer Dave Canales, who raised Geno Smith from the dead, who salvaged Baker Mayfield's career. Like, I'm excited to see that pairing and to see what this noted QB whisperer can do with Bryce Young.
Bogman, you do have Levis pretty clearly lower than Young in your rankings.
I do, but I agree with you, Worm. I definitely think that there is a path where Will Levis, is awesome. He has a great cast and crew surrounding him, but in this case, it is all about draft capital, to be honest. Because if Will Levis sucks, he's not getting a second shot. This isn't the regime that took him. This isn't those guys. It isn't for Bryce Young either. But a number 1 overall pick is going to get more than a couple seasons to make it. So he for sure has next year. This is the audition for Will Levis. And if it doesn't go well this year, the Titans are going to be looking around in free agency and in the draft to replace him, because they're not going to mess around with this. I think there's definitely a chance where Will Levis gets the job done, and they're giving him no excuses. We bought you Tony Pollard. We brought in Calvin. We brought in Boyd. We're sticking around with Hopkins. We're not trading him. Okonkwo is a great tight end as well, I think. So, he has no excuses, but it has to work this year. And if it doesn't, I think that leash is super short for him. And, if he's real bad, you could even see Mason Rudolph this year. So there's just too much variance for me for Will Levis. I hate Mason Rudolph. For the record, I don't think that happens. But what I'm saying, if you're bad, you will get replaced, because they brought in a guy that they like, Mason Rudolph. That's why they brought him in. So, I would rather have Malik Willis, to be honest with you. But, talk about a guy that's not getting a fair shake at all. But, I think Will Levis, he's got to perform well quickly to hold on to this job.
The last guy I want to talk about in this tier is somebody that you're both higher on the consensus. That's Justin Fields. Bogman, I'll start with you just quickly on Fields. May not even necessarily be the starter this year, but you know what the rushing talent is and the upside is there. This is the last chance for him, though, right?
This is it. But it is 100% the crazy rushing upside that Justin Fields has, and the insane fantasy numbers that he puts up when he's out there. Even when he's bad, he'll put up decent numbers a lot. So, and I hate Russell Wilson. So, I don't think Russell Wilson is going to work. I think Justin Fields takes over pretty quickly, and he's going to be handing the ball off a lot and running the ball a lot. So, I think it's all on the rushing upside because we've seen it.
Fitz, what do you think about Fields?
Big time rushing upside, and he does have arm talent, but he has to learn sack avoidance. He's been a sack magnet, and that's going to derail his career unless he learns how to fix that.
I'll quickly read through the names in tier 5 and just give you guys a chance to maybe highlight one that stands out to you that you think there's a case to be higher. The names are Geno Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, Gardner Minshew, Sam Howell, Aiden O'Connell, Spencer Rattler, Kenny Pickett, and Sam Darnold. So, Bogman, pick out one of those that you think maybe has a case to be a tier higher.
To me, it's Sam Howell. I think that the Seahawks really, really like this guy. They really... I don't know that this staff loves Geno either, and he's old and replaceable. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that Sam Howell is ready. I think we saw in Washington last year, he's not ready. But I think sitting for the majority of this year will really help him. Learning a new system will really help him. And the fact that they'll have a defense that isn't giving up points in bunches like Washington was will make it so he's not so desperate to throw the ball at the end of the game and just keep throwing these terrible interceptions and taking sacks. So for me, it's Sam Howell because he still has a good arm and rushing upside.
Fitz, want to pick somebody?
Well, first, let me just say, I think Bogman's totally wrong about Sam Howell. I think he's a complete train wreck. Talk about sack magnets. I mean, he almost makes, Justin Fields look reasonable in that regard. Just a sack magnet.
He clearly was not ready. I'm not disagreeing with you there, Fitz. But
End of the
Seahawks
season,
like him.
end of the season meltdown. I mean, he was completing like under 50% of his passes by the end. Like the wheels completely came off.
You're
I have
seeing ghosts.
no hope for Sam Howell. Daniel Jones is maybe one guy we shouldn't completely bury yet because he was actually pretty good 2 years ago. He and Dable clicked. Obviously, last year things weren't clicking. Then he got hurt. I do want to give Daniel Jones one more chance.
I think that's fair, at least just in terms of, I mean, he's with a head coach that we've seen do it before with talented guys who can be erratic and are mobile and kind of figured it out. And we saw it kind of in Jones's first year with him to a degree. So I think that's reasonable. I'll just highlight too, like, I think Spencer Rattler has a chance to be the starter by the end of this season. Not that maybe he's going to be some elite high level starter, certainly not. But it's not like the quarterback situation's any good in New Orleans. And this is a guy who had some pedigree as a projected number 1 overall pick at one point in his football playing career. So he's somebody that if I'm looking for that late round flyer, especially in a super flex, I'd be more than happy to take the swing on him with one of my later picks. Just on kind of that overall quarterback strategy, Fitz, I'll start with you. How do you approach in a dynasty startup draft quarterback differently between 1 QB and Superflex? Obviously, the baseline answer is obvious. You value quarterback more in Superflex, but in terms of how that's actually taking play, actionably, what are you doing differently in 1 QB versus Superflex?
In 1 QB, I'm super laissez-faire with quarterbacks, and like the supply is so plentiful. It's why I don't like 1 quarterback dynasty leagues, quite honestly. Like it devalues the quarterback position so much. And I was just talking to a user on the Discord the other night. Like, he's in a league, it's a 1 QB dynasty league, and they have like 4 flex positions. I'm like, do you realize how watered down quarterback and this guy is sitting on like Anthony Richardson, Dak Prescott, like 4 really good starting quarterbacks. I'm like, these guys are worthless, basically. And the way your league is set up. Whereas in Superflex, you always have to be tending to that position. And like, who feels comfortable in a Superflex league if they don't have 3 quarterbacks who are actually playing? And yet with the game of musical chairs we play, there are always going to be a couple teams in a 12-team Superflex that don't have 3 quarterbacks who are their team's starting quarterbacks at any time. So you're always looking to nurture that position and keep it healthy.
Yeah, everybody should do what they want, like, play in the leagues that bring you joy. This is a game at the end of the day. But for me, I don't think I will ever play in a 1 QB dynasty format again. It's just I don't enjoy the format. I don't enjoy how watered down quarterback is when it's the most important position in the real game. I don't think it should be the least important.
If you're doing a 1 QB league, make it a 16 man.
Yeah.
Because then you're not watering down. Everybody has to have 2 because you got to have one for a backup. So, and I have in a league like that, I have hoarded QBs, and they will bring you back some decent trade offers as well. So, I'm with both you guys. If you're gonna do a 1 QB league, make it a big league so that the value is not watered down for those guys.
Just give me a number. No need to dive in and give me all the different names. In the first round of a 12-team Superflex startup dynasty draft, how many quarterbacks should go in that first round? Fitz?
8.
8 or 9. 8 or 9. Yeah, a lot.
Want to give you guys a quick note on the Cheat Sheet Creator. Create the perfect rankings for your league with the Cheat Sheet Creator. Add tiers and sync your league to create custom rankings based on your league settings. Visit fantasypros.com/draftwizard or use the Cheat Sheet Creator on our Fantasy Football Draft Wizard app to dominate your draft. All right, guys, let's dive into the tight end tiers and rankings here in Dynasty. We will start, of course, with tier 1. And it's a small tier. A lot of the tiers we have are, 4 names deep, maybe 5. This is just 2. It's Sam LaPorta, consensus number 1. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. And Trey McBride at number 2. Bogman, you do agree with McBride at 2. Fitz, you're a little lower. So Fitz, why do you have some other guys ahead of Trey McBride?
We are really splitting hairs between Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, and I don't know how you separate those guys for Dynasty. I think it's super close. I actually like Kincaid a little more just because I think the Bills need him more this year than the Cardinals need Trey McBride. And I don't know if Trey McBride always totally clicked with Kyler last year. So we'll see how that develops and what the chemistry looks like this year. But not to knock either guy. I think they both have a reasonable case, but the guy I actually have at tight end 2 is down on the second tier. It's Brock Bowers. I mean, this guy, and I know Bogman gets excited talking about Brock Bowers too, but like this guy is a mega tight end prospect, maybe the best tight end prospect that like ever come into the NFL. This guy is, I'm really excited to see what he's going to do.
Do you think he's a better, ignore what we've seen in the NFL from Pitts, do you think he's a better tight end prospect than Pitts was?
I do, yes.
Bogman, what do you think about that comparison?
Yeah, I do too. And Pitts was really good, but I mean Bowers is just unbelievable with the ball in his hands. And he could play running back. Like he can do so many different things. He's not just a tight end. So I couldn't believe that Fitz had him higher than me. I thought I was maybe a little crazy having him at 3, and here Fitzy is at 2. I was shocked when I was putting
the
it together.
Freshman year impact he had at Georgia, just as a freshman. I remember watching that guy like, wait, he is a freshman? Are you kidding me? Like, we have to wait this long for this guy to get in the NFL and be draftable in Dynasty League?
Kirby Smart said he would have been the best running back we had on our roster if we played him at that position. So, and they just did. They made him a tight end. So, I mean, the dude is amazing.
I love that everyone is so devaluing him in redraft because he went to the Raiders.
Yes.
Like, that means like he's not going to do anything. I think he's going to surprise people with what he does as a rookie.
He's my tight end 5 in redraft. I don't think anyone has him that high for redraft. But I think I was high on redraft for LaPorta at 12 last year or something. So
well, I was going to ask if how the landing spot might have impacted how you guys rank him in Dynasty. I think that's probably the biggest reason why his consensus ranking is tight end 6. I don't think it would have been that outside the top 5 if he had gone to a better landing spot. Clearly, that's not throwing you guys off the trail here.
No, yeah. I mean, the landing spot, I understand people saying, oh, they took Maye last year, and Maye was, obviously so good at Notre Dame, and it didn't translate to this weird Aiden O'Connell-led offense last year. I still think Maye is a very, very good tight end, but Brock Bowers is not a tight end. He's an offensive weapon. He's a slot guy. He can play outside. He can take handoffs. He can run reverses. Like, he's going to do whatever you want. He's going to open up this whole offense. So he's not just a tight end. You can't think about him as a tight end. He is a weapon. So I am not bothered by 2 guys sharing one spot because they're not really sharing a spot.
Fitz, did you give any consideration to Bowers or anybody else as tight end 1, or was it literally 0 seconds it took? You wrote it. Did it take even like 10 seconds to just say, no, it's definitely LaPorta, or it was a total no-brainer?
Yeah, LaPorta gave us a pretty convincing rookie year. And, the fact that just doing that and putting up those kinds of numbers in an offense that has a prolific pass catcher and Amon-Ra St. Brown and some other nice contributors. Yeah, like it was a pretty easy choice. I mean, I love Bowers, but Sammy had such a good rookie year. He's got to be number 1.
Bogman, I mean, same question. You do have Trey McBride at tight end 2. Did you consider him at all for 1, or again, it was a total write it in pen? It's definitely LaPorta.
I mean, I have LaPorta, McBride, Bowers, and Andrews in my top tier. So those guys being tight end number 1 to me is fine. And I'll tell you, I would have had Hawkinson in there if he didn't have this major knee injury at the end of the year. That's going to cost him a lot of this year as well, because he had such an enormous season last year. But, who knows, coming off a major knee injury and you're going to miss a big chunk of this year. Like, what are you going to do when you come back? Are they going to rush you? There's just so many questions with him now. He can't be up there. But no, I mean, for me, it was always kind of LaPorta at 1. But if someone has, Bowers at 1, I have no issues.
Looking at tier 2, it's Mark Andrews at tight end 3, Kyle Pitts at tight end 4, Dalton Kincaid at tight end 5, Brock Bowers at tight end 6, TJ Hawkinson at tight end 7, and Travis Kelce at tight end 8. Outside of the fact that Kelce is going to be really good still, we assume, for the near term. And of course, it's a long term is the reason why he's much lower. Outside of that factor, to me, it does feel like Andrews, Pitts, Kincaid, Bowers is the right kind of next 4 in some order, with Hawkinson behind those guys. Fitz, you are slightly lower on Andrews. That's, I'm assuming, just an age thing.
Yeah, and really it's just that I've got Bowers higher than everyone else, like slipping Bowers in where Bowers ECR is tight end 6 and I've got him at tight end 2. I mean, that kind of kicks everyone down a spot.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have Pitts than Andrews. Like, I like Andrews, absolutely a solid tier 2 guy for me. And I think there's a big gap for me between my tight end 6, Mark Andrews, and number 7, TJ Hawkinson, because I'm really worried about, what this injury means for Hawkinson long term.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. Bogman, you obviously do have Andrews kind of in that tier 1. You're slightly lower than Fitz on Kyle Pitts. This is similar to kind of Justin Fields. This is kind of the like last chance. Like, okay, Arthur Smith is gone. You're another year removed from the injury. Let's like really see you be this guy who was kind of the prince who was promised at tight end when he first came out. Still, tight end 7 is not a bad ranking. It's just a little lower than consensus.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I was, I wasn't purposely putting Pitts low. I wasn't like, I don't like Pitts, I'm going to move him down. I still really like Pitts. I just think there's a lot of good tight ends at the top here. So for me, it was just Bowers ahead of him. I'm a Mark Andrews stan, of course. I still think Kincaid has a lot of hope, and I'm maybe the one guy that I can waver on is Hawkinson because of the knee injury. I still have above him. But I don't know. I just think that the Vikings they have no need to rush Hawkinson because they already have good pass catchers. So hopefully they don't. And we get the same guy that we saw coming back, and he's allowed enough time to come back properly. So, that is a big question, but that's why I have Hawk ahead of Pitts there.
We haven't really mentioned him. I think Dalton Kincaid, outside of maybe Bowers, has as good a chance as anybody in this tier of being a tier 1 tight end, according to consensus, a year from now. I mean, the opportunity for targets is there. He's paired with an elite quarterback. He has the first round pedigree. He wasn't bad his first year. He was just kind of overshadowed by LaPorta being this historic rookie season. I think Kincaid is possibly undervalued here, Fitz.
Yeah, really strong finishing kick for him, too. I think he had like 225 yards or something in his last 4 games, if you include the playoffs. So basically a 1,000-yard pace for him. It's going to be prominently featured in the offense without a doubt this year with what they've lost in terms of targets with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. So, yeah, I mean, paired with a top quarterback, things are looking up for him. He's really talented. We didn't get quite the rookie year we were hoping for, but I think year 2 could be a big one.
Quick thoughts on Kincaid, Bogman?
I will be shocked if we don't see a big step from Kincaid. So I'm not guaranteeing it. That's why I'm as tight end 1 in my second tier, but he is tight end 1 in my second tier. I do think that we see it.
The next tier here runs from tight end 9 to tight end 17. George Kittle, David Njoku, Evan Ingram, Jake Ferguson, Dallas Goedert, Pat Freiermuth, Cole Kmet, Ben Sinnott, and Dalton Schultz. Pat Freiermuth is somebody that you are much lower on, Bogman, despite the fact that he's a Steeler. You have him tight end 21. That's 8 spots lower than Fitz, 7 spots lower than consensus. Is it the quarterback situation, or is it Arthur Smith? What's keeping you from being higher on Freiermuth?
He's a Darnell Washington truther, maybe?
Yeah.
Nope. Let's do this one. For real life, you would say Pitts is way more talented than Freiermuth, right? Right, Fitzy? Kyle Pitts is? Okay. And what did Arthur Smith do?
I was going to say, I see where this is going.
Yeah. What did Arthur Smith do to Kyle Pitts, right? So I love Freiermuth, but I think that we might see more Darnell Washington on the field just as an extra blocker because he's basically a 6 offensive lineman on the field. So I don't know what the snap count is going to look like. I know the passing is going to be taking a gigantic dip for the Steelers system here. I want nothing to do with Pat Freiermuth until we see it. So I have him ranked low.
Fitz, you're pretty in line with consensus on a lot of these, maybe like 1 spot higher on a few of them, but roughly in line. Is there anybody that you want to speak on in this tier, or is it pretty straightforward to you?
Yeah, it is pretty straightforward. I think Jake Ferguson, like, no one wants to believe last year was real. Like, I think it's real. And he plays a prominent role in this Dallas passing game that doesn't have, CeeDee Lamb obviously is a monster. But after that, it's an aging Brandon Cooks. Jalen Tolbert hasn't proven anything. I think Ferguson is going to be a wash in targets again. And I think he could actually, things could get better. He actually led all tight ends in red zone targets last year and yet came away with only 5 touchdowns. So his season could have been even better. The funny thing about Bogman totally burying Pat Freiermuth is that, like, the wideout situation is so bad. Like, if the Steelers don't trade for Brandon Ayuk, like, Freiermuth could be an 800-yard tight end this year quite easily.
Yeah. I mean, I just the whole goal is to run the ball so much. I just think that for Freiermuth to be productive, he's going to have to score a bunch of touchdowns. And with the bad quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, I don't know how many touchdowns they're scoring and how many times are they throwing it once they get down there with all of these giant monsters that they have on the offensive line now, and Justin Fields. Like, Justin Fields could be just a goal line package guy right now. So they could do that with him. So I just don't know how much they're putting the ball in the air this year, especially at the goal line. So I'm just going to be not having any shares of Freiermuth this year.
Just briefly on tier 4 here, I'll read the names. Luke Musgrave, Michael Mayer, Isaiah Likely, Tucker Kraft, Jatavian Sanders, Cade Otton, Chiga Okonkwo, Noah Fant, Greg Dulcich, Juwan Johnson, and Hunter Henry. I'll let each of you just kind of pick out one name here that you want to hit on. Bogman, does anybody stand out to you?
How about my boy Sanders? I mean, tight end is a big transition, so maybe it's not immediate, but this is a pass-catching tight end in a system that is desperate for pass catchers. So I think that Carolina is a great opportunity for him to produce quickly. I think that Tommy Tremble is not as good as I thought he was going to be coming out of Notre Dame. I was a big Tommy Tremble fan, but it has not worked out yet. So I think Sanders could take off quickly. So he's I got to at least give love to one of my Texas guys. So that'll be my guy for the day.
Fitz, what do you think about anybody in this tier?
I think if it was either Luke Musgrave or Tucker Kraft as the sole young starting tight end for the Packers, like, they would be in tier 3, probably like
Tier
in the
2.
middle of tier 3. Yeah. Like, but because that situation is so opaque and it's not clear which is the proper guy to have, that's I don't know, sort of obscuring things. They're probably both going to play this year and devalue each other. And I do think Greg Dulcich could be kind of a sleeper from this tier. Like, hurt pretty much all of last year, hurt for much of his rookie year, but like, what we saw of him in his rookie year was actually pretty impressive. So I want to see what he does in the Sean Payton offense, because we didn't really get to see it last year.
In this tier, I'm looking at like upside as much as I possibly can when you get to this point in dynasty tight end rankings. Isaiah Likely, like any game that Mark Andrews is not playing, Likely is going to be a top 8 tight end. He is only 24 years old. It's an offense that likes to throw to tight ends. It's a quarterback that likes to throw to tight ends. I mean, even though Andrews is there, for the foreseeable future, I think Likely is good enough. There's also not other receivers there. There's at least a lot of them that are going to take too many targets away. Like, we like Zay Flowers. We're hoping to see it from Rashad Bateman, but I think he could be in deeper leagues playable in, even when Mark Andrews is on the field. And he's like a no-brainer when Mark Andrews isn't playing. So I really like the upside with Likely. Last question.
We're such homers, by the way. I just talked about a Texas guy. Fitz talked about the Packers situation.
Yeah.
And then you talked about a Raven.
Listen.
We're such homers.
When you get to tier 4 of dynasty tight end rankings, you are allowed to be a homer. That is the time for it. When you're looking at pick number 19 in your 19th round in your startup draft.
Funny stuff.
On tight end strategy, before we wrap up, do you guys find that you, in like a tight end premium format, are more aggressive about trying to get one of these guys? Or is it that the position itself is A, like pretty inconsistent year to year, B, despite the fact that the top actually does seem better than it has been in recent years in terms of guys who are really good and still young, it's still like, after you get to that drop off, it's like kind of uninspiring. So do you find in tight end premium, Bogman, that you are aggressively going after one of those top guys, or is it still let the position fall to me type of spot?
I think in any scenario, I'm Ricky Bobby. So if you ain't first, you're last. I'm getting a top tier guy, or I am waiting. That is what I'm doing, because I have 2 tiers really that encapsulate almost all tight end ones. It's 1 through 4 and then 5 through 11. So once I get past those top 4 guys, I'm waiting. And the same thing in redraft. Once I get past my top tier, I'm waiting. That is my overall strategy, because tight end is pretty deep. There's a lot of talent at this position, and I think there's even replacement talent. The guys behind the guys are still pretty good at a lot of teams as well. So I am absolutely waiting on tight end.
Fitz, what's your strategy?
In tight end premium, I'm certainly like wanting to have a top tight end, but in a startup draft that is tight end premium, I tend to fade tight ends in that, because I think people overvalue the tight end position when it's tight end premium, and that pushes down, that creates value at other positions. And I like to scoop up the value, like, you've got good wide receivers, good running backs falling to places where they should not fall because of the tight ends getting pushed up maybe more than they should. So, then I want to eventually go back and sort of correct my oversight of the tight ends in the startup draft and do what I can to, patch that hole later on. But in the startup, I kind of fade tight ends in tight end premium.
Not always, but I often in startup mocks go for kind of a premium tight end, like, a luxury pick, if you want to call it that. And then when I sit down for the real thing, I always find myself thinking,
coward.
I can't pass up a receiver here, or if I've been waiting on a running back who fell, or a second quarterback receiver, I'm never one to pass it up for a tight end. So
I'll say, if you think one of these guys stands out above the rest, like those years where Travis Kelce was putting up unbelievable numbers, specifically in tight end premium, he gave you such an unbelievable advantage. So if there's one tight end that you really like and you think could be that next level Travis Kelce, whether it is Kincaid or Bowers or one of the young guys, make sure you get that guy, because it could be an enormous advantage.
I was going to say, if Bowers falls too far because of the landing spot, or if Kincaid falls because people go for either the more surefire young guys in, LaPorta, or if they like McBride better, or one of the veterans, I'm trying to win, I'll take Kelce or Andrews or whatever. I will happily take a sliding Kincaid or Bowers and try and kind of be at the last guy to take one in that elite tier, or what I perceive to be an elite tier. But yeah, it's not a position I'm aggressively going after, certainly. I think that's the right way to approach it. Even, that's mainly in standard tight end premium, obviously, depending on your league settings, possibly a different story. We'll get out of there on that. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for Fitz and Bogman. I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you again, and we'll see you again next week.